All right. Well, I understand that I have a sister um, who is just a few months older than me.
Yes, he was living with a young girl at the adult bookstore. I didn't find this out right away, but apparently she was about 15 and pregnant, and he at first made me think that he was just helping out this runaway. Later on, I found out that she had been his girlfriend and that she was carrying his baby. So by the time my baby was born, which
Which
is
was
you, um, his first daughter had already been born, and her name was Amber Dawn.
we won't say the last name.
No,
Okay.
and she was a few months older than you. That is right.
Okay. Yeah, I've actually looked her up. She's got. Well, I know that he told you he was Italian, which due to my DNA, I'm questioning. But she looks nothing like me. She has very dark hair, maybe a little olive skin. You know.
Yeah, I think Susie's side of the DNA probably gave a lot. She was a little dark skinned, Eastern European looking,
Mm-hmm.
so possibly that made quite a different match for a baby.
Yeah. Well, I know that you had when you were pregnant with me, your youngest your brother had died, Michael, and you were sure that I was a boy, and you had the name all picked out. And
Of
but then when
course.
you saw me, you said I looked like
Pebbles. You had a little tuft of red hair here, and I could just see putting a little ribbon on that and strolling you down the avenue like Wilma, showing off her little pebbles. Yeah, I couldn't put pebbles onto you, though. So I gave you the name I wanted to give you, Michael Victoria.
Yes. And do you remember me stomping home from school and I was maybe second grade and after another fight from what are you, a boy? Why is your name Michael? And do you remember what name I said I wish you would have named me?
You said that you wished I would have named you Mary Ann.
Do you know I said that one because Marianne from Gilligan's Island?
No, I was more thinking of Mary Ann Faithful, which I thought was a really good name too. But you were stuck with Michael. Sorry, darling.
No, I'm definitely a Michael because who but God can make something out of someone like me, and that is exactly what Michael means.
All right,
Yeah.
I like that.
So, I found out that my dad had quite a few names, and we weren't sure exactly who was raising him because it wasn't his mother or father. It was a kidnapping story. What can you tell me about that?
All I really know is that he was adopted by the woman he called his mother, Aggie, and her husband was Joseph. And
no, her husband was Abraham.
I'm sorry, her husband was Abraham. I'm sorry. The thing that did strike me about the names was when he was in prison when you were born, and I wrote him a letter and I said, well, I want to make sure that I get everything on the birth certificate correct. And he told me his name was Joseph Donald Bluebird Mogul. So I thought that was kind of odd, but I put it on your birth certificate just like that.
Well, there's as I'm doing the DNA and whatnot through ancestry, it seems like from them linking me to people all over the world, actually, New York and California too, but Hawaii, Germany, Austria. It's a lot of weird DNA matches. In fact, they gave me some names of some people in New York, and it said contact at your own risk, which I found very scary and odd. So I haven't been contacting anyone, but it seems that Abraham is not really the name Abraham, and it seems that Aggie might have had a different name too. What can you tell me about Abraham?
Well, he was very old when I moved in with Aggie to have you there in
Seems like
New
he was
York.
always working in a meat packing factory or something like
He
that.
was retired. He was very old, and even acted even older than he was because he slept in a chair. He only went out to the doctor or maybe just for a tiny walk every day, and the rest of the time he sat in the chair. And eventually he did die of pneumonia.
Now, he and Joseph didn't talk. Am I correct? He didn't talk to Joseph, his adopted son.
When we came in the house, he might have shouted out a greeting, but no big. I mean, most of the conversation was between Aggie, Joseph, and me.
Okay.
And Abraham stayed in the chair.
And so Abraham was of Jewish descent.
Yes.
Okay, tell me about that. Right before I was born, you guys had to.
All I know is that when he died, his body was sent to Brookline, Massachusetts, and Aggie and I were instructed to come on a bus to the funeral, which we did. And that at that time we met about 10 family members who had come together to bury Abraham. And they took us to their house and gave us a meal. And you could just tell that they were Jewish.
There was a conversation that one of them had when he saw that you were pregnant with Joseph's baby, and he said something that I was.
It was one of the women, and she said, she was asking Aggie at the funeral meal, have you heard from your son, and is he in any trouble? Apparently he'd been in trouble many times, and I don't remember Aggie's answer, but the woman looked at me and said, are you one of his problems? And I said no, because I didn't feel like a problem, but of course I was a big problem.
So there was not a conversation where someone came up and said, is she going to be a problem? Is that what?
No.
Okay. And when I was born, something was sent?
Yes. Actually, it was after we got home from the funeral, before you were born. There came a package from Brookline, Massachusetts, and it had dozens and dozens of little baby gowns and t-shirts and things like that. It was really, really nice. It was really great to have that. They came in so handy.
So after I was born, I know somehow you ended up back in, well, you went and remarried your other husband. Is that correct? The Gypsy got kidnapped from you.
Well, this is what happened.
Now, this is before I was born, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
By the time of my 6-week checkup for my pregnancy with you, the doctor told me I was okay, and your doctor said you were okay, and I told Aggie I had to go home. I had to get my older daughter, and I had to see my mother.
Now, but see, when we left off, it was Gypsy, Joe, and me. So Gypsy was taken from you.
Well, a lot of other things happened between that and what you asked me about.
Okay.
Yeah, we traveled around. We did all those check things, and then eventually, that was when you were little, so that came after he got out of prison and we got back together. So we're getting out of sequence here, a big deal.
Okay. Well, we'll just go with the flow.
Okay.
So you ended up remarrying your ex-husband who...
Yes, I ended up remarrying my first husband who had divorced me while I was off with Joseph having a baby, and I went down to visit my older daughter.
So he had Gypsy at this point.
He stole her from my mother's house, and my mother helped him. So
because they were afraid of my dad?
Oh, yeah.
Why?
Well, because they found out that he had a gun, he had a record. So, yeah, they thought I was crazy, and they were just protecting Gypsy,
yeah,
little Gypsy.
All right.
So, big Gypsy. But anyway, I lost my train of thought now.
Okay, you
Where were
remarried
we?
him, and so you had me, and he said that he would adopt me,
Yes, he wanted to adopt you.
and you stayed there until what happened? You kept the post office box?
I did. I kept writing letters to the man I loved who was in prison. I remarried Ray, my first husband, so that there wouldn't be a custody issue. I just used him abominably. And when Joe got out of prison, I took off with my 2 girls this time
Mm-hmm.
in my car, and I met him. We met up in Des Moines, Iowa. That's where we decided to meet, and that's where we went.
Okay. So then, did you travel around? Was he cashing checks? He was pretending to be an FBI agent or an agent of
Well, he had lots of different jobs. But once he got that printing press and once he got that FDIC seal, which he stole from the same printing place where he bought the printer, yeah, it was easier for him to cash checks because they had FDIC written on them.
Mm-hmm.
And people kind of trusted that. So, yeah, we got a condo. Boy, we got a condo. We rented a condo. The girls and I would stay home. He would go out, make money, come back. But eventually, he got caught.
Can you tell me anything about that?
I'm pretty sure it
Were
was
you in Kentucky?
Kansas City.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that what happened was, and I don't think Joseph ever knew this, but I did.
Mm-hmm.
Gypsy loved just taking things out. One time, I found her burying my diamond watch in the yard outside because she told me she was going to dig it up later for treasure. And I understand she's a child, but she took those FDIC IDs outside and played with them. And one of our neighbors was the wife of a police officer. And I'm pretty sure that's how they found us.
Oh my.
It's ironic, but
So Gypsy got a hold. How old was Gypsy?
she was
4.
she was about 4.
So she had the printing press equipment for the illegal operation out with like buried treasure.
I did catch it on her one time, so I don't know. It might have been
Okay.
something different. But I'm thinking that it was probably that because they came right to our house.
Tell me about that.
Oh, it was so horrible. They took Joe.
So I was there and Gypsy was there.
They took Joe. They put him in handcuffs. He didn't have anything on his feet. I got his socks and put his socks on his feet and put his shoes on him. And I was like shaking all over.
Was it FBI? Was it?
It was FBI.
Yes. And they had guns drawn.
I don't recall any guns being drawn, but they went all over the house, looked at all different things, and took away a lot of my pictures and things, which I really hated, but there was nothing I could say to stop them.
That's very interesting because you cannot find a picture of Joseph anywhere, not even on the police arrests. It's like he is the invisible man.
I had a robe with long pockets, and inside the pocket was another pocket which I'd sewn on, and I'd squirreled away a $20 bill every time I could.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a couple $100.
Okay.
So I put the girls in the car and drove. I drove to my attorney's house in Columbus, Ohio.
Okay.
I went straight to the attorney's house. I just drove there. I drove so quick and so hard that I ruined my car by letting it run out of oil, and I didn't know any better. So I ruined a nice little car doing that. But I had to find out what I had to do to make sure that I could keep my baby girls and be safe and stay out of jail. So I drove to my attorney's house, and he took me in, gave me some good advice, and I told him I wanted to be near my mom. He said I wouldn't go there just yet. I would wait stay somewhere else for at least 6 months until you see what's going on. So I went to Fairborn, Ohio, and I got a job at a Frisch's drive-thru where I was a car hop. And one payday, I called a cab, and we went to Kmart in a cab, and the cab driver was Les, and I ended up marrying Les, and I was with him for about 14 years before he died.
Well, I just real quick, and we can do this another time too. I wanted to ask you, what about when you guys were arrested and you were in a Louisville and you called your dad, who is a sheriff? By the way, I'd like to mention to the audience that her side of the family is a long line of law enforcement, from Texas Rangers, lots of sheriffs. Her dad was a sheriff in Louisiana, and versus my dad's side of the family, Joseph Bluebird, who is a long line of criminal and mafia type characters. We're not quite sure. But what about the time that you were taken in to Louisville? Is that correct?
Well, Louisville is a different time. I didn't call my dad from Louisville.
Oh.
I called my dad from a different place.
But you did go to jail for a moment.
I went to jail for 3 weeks while I was pregnant with you.
Okay.
I was in Louisville jail for 3 weeks. Joseph made a deal with the DA that he would plead guilty to writing the checks if they would let me go.
Is that how he ended up in prison when I was born?
Yes.
Okay. But then he got right back out.
He did not get back out for at least a good year.
Yeah. Well, it seems like he had hundreds of federal warrants, and he always just gets in and gets right back out. It's really an interesting concept. It's interesting to look at.
Yeah.
And he's escaped. We have some newspaper articles. Did he tell you anything about his escapes and how he escaped? He's escaped a few times. One, I can't really find the information on, but I believe it was in Colorado. That was
He never told me any of that stuff.
I asked him as a child. I asked him about the escapes, and he told me a few things. I'll put those on film later, but I guess we'll kind of wrap this up. Can you tell me anything personal about my dad and why you loved him? And was he a good man?
Yeah.
And
I loved him. He was interesting and fun, and he made me laugh. And I saw the potential in him. And I didn't have God in my life at that time.
Didn't you mention God before, like, oh God, and he said...
I only had God as my mother and father presented him to me. I knew there was a God, but I didn't really know the power that I could have as a Christian. So if it had been, but I saw the potential in him. In my mind's eye, I saw him becoming a better man with all his good qualities still intact, where we could live in front of everybody and go to church like normal people and have a normal life, what I thought was a normal life. But it didn't happen.
Yeah. And I think from what I've heard, little things that I've heard you talk about, I think there's a lot of things that you could admire about him. Like, he never asked for money. What did you say? If in a desperate situation when you guys were on the run and had to leave everything behind, he would never ask someone for money. Instead, you said he would, like, read palms or tell fortunes.
Yeah, we would drive up to a mall and he'd go inside, and usually I would wait in the car. He would go inside and start doing sketches, or and he got information from me about astrology. He was trying to write people's charts or read their palm. He did that sort of thing, and people would give him money, and then he'd bring the money and we'd go eat.
Do sketches? What do you mean, do sketches?
Pictures.
What did he look like? He could draw. He was an artist.
He was a man of many talents.
Yes. Yeah.
Jack of all trades.
Yeah. Master of none?
Probably.
Okay. What did he look like, since we can't find a picture of him?
He did look a little bit Italian. He was thin and wiry. had twinkling eyes, and not hard to look at.
Cupid's bow mouth. I remember you saying that.
Yes, he had a Cupid's bow. He sure did.
Yeah. Okay, well, I guess we'll wrap this up. This is going to be part 1. I'd like to hear all kinds of adventures from you, and I really thank you for coming on. And if you could do some here from the house, we could do. As soon as I figure out the computer, we'll get it going, and you will be my number 1 guest.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Sometime. Okay.